Hey there again, folks. Uh, don't mind me, I kind of woke up a little bit with the afternoon nap, but anyway, hello everyone tuning in live or tuning in to the replay or listening in at a later date. This is the Thru Autistic Eyes podcast, and this is your host, Christopher D. Casson, who is also called by some the Autistic Guru because some people, like my previous guest, seem so insistent on me using that name for whatever reason. But you know what? He's not here. Instead, it's my current guest right here for this podcast, Linda Tomai Duong. She is a business mindset, business strategy coach, executive coach, self-leadership coach, best-selling author, inspirational speaker, and the founder of the nonprofit 3 Hearts, and has been featured in a documentary that has won 24 global awards and has been inducted into the International Bestselling Authors Organization. She is also your Zero to Hero coach to help you speak English better if English is not your first language. And despite being born at the end of the Vietnam War with minimal resources and education and not knowing a word of English when she went to an eventual home in Sydney, Australia, she has achieved every single one of her dreams thus far that she had always dreamt up of. And her mission in life is to be known as an inspiration for others to become more than what they thought they could be and help them attain their ultimate happiness. As her saying here is, happiness is another form of wealth, the most treasured form of wealth. So anyway, and she's also been awarded an honorary doctorate in education. And you have a lot of accomplishments on your plate, and you accomplished every one of your dreams. So thank you so much for having the time to speak with me and to everyone else to learn more about you. Oh, you're muted. Hold on.
Hi, everybody. Let's start again.
Okay.
Thank you, Christopher, for having me on. Greetings, everybody, from Sydney, Australia.
And I kind of, hold on. You mentioned I did notice that you said an award-winning film. Can we just quickly go over what that film was about, since I'm kind of curious?
Oh, okay. So that film is about cyber safety education for children. Well, for adults, for parents to guide the children on cyber safety.
Yeah, that's definitely more prevalent now than ever, especially with the whole issue with human trafficking and all the other cyberbullying and all the other stuff. That's definitely very important. And speaking of childhood, you did mention that you came from the end of Vietnam War, from Vietnam to Australia. So, and I'm kind of curious how the journey of going through all that has shaped your life and became hold on, why is my brain always freezing up? But you get what I mean. Just how did that influence to where you are today with everything you've done?
Largely, it's because I just follow my heart and follow my dreams. So I don't follow what the trends are, so-called. I don't give in to societal's expectations. I just keep in my lane, do what I aspire to do, keep following my heart, and basically stick to my dreams. And I think mainly it's the curiosity that I have and the thirst for learning, because I did not have that opportunity when I was there, when I was growing up in Vietnam. I did not have anything. I literally played with soils and sticks. I didn't even have color pencils. And so I did not even, when I was first growing up, I was only seeing black and white photos and black and white TVs. So it was very basic. I did not even know what a globe look like or a world map look like. So nothing that kids have here. And I never seen what a computer looked like before I came to Sydney, Australia. That's how basic it was. So after I came to Sydney, Australia, it was like a complete new world. It was very overwhelming, but also very exciting. And it was very difficult because I did not have the language skills. I did not have friends. It was really, really difficult. But I did not let that overwhelmingness overtake me. So I stay centered, I stay grounded with my amazing parents, support. I think that's what is most important, is to have your parents' support. And so with that, I was able to block out the outside noise, so-called, the outside new world's expectation or whatever it was. I think also partially, to stay to the truth of the story, is that partially I didn't know what to expect. If you come from a world of so minimal, you don't have, well, for me, it wasn't like, oh, I come to this new world, now I want to do this, I expect myself to do this, and the world is so amazing, so I should be doing this, I should be doing that. I didn't have any of those. I was pretty much stay grounded, learn the basic first. I need to learn my English. I need to be able to communicate with people. So that was a fundamental. Always remember your fundamentals, because a lot of people aspire to be success in a quick way, in a short amount of time. Whereas for me at the time, it was like, I need to get this basic first. So I was like practicing my English 24, so-called 24/7. And we made a commitment between my siblings, the three youngest little ones at home. So I'm the second last of the 10 kids. And the three little ones, the three youngest one, we made a commitment to each other that we would not speak our language to each other, that we would practice English so that we can get good at it. And that's how we were able to move on quickly. And I literally take the dictionary wherever I go. I literally have the dictionary with me, because imagine you go to Mongolia or China or Russia or anywhere,
or
right?
Cambodia, which I did a few years ago.
Exactly. But the difference is that nowadays, before you go there, you probably have the travel guide. You probably have YouTube. You
We
probably have
probably have Google Translate on the phone to really translate. But back then, at your time, we didn't have any of that.
nothing.
And I think this is also part of the importance of really getting that outside view, because for people like me that were born into Western society, we really have no idea what it's like outside. A lot of times we don't even move outside of the places we were born and raised in. So I think it's just important to have these type of conversations to really know that it isn't the same for everyone, and sometimes just get a different viewpoint from those who are just immigrating out of the country for whatever reason, such as for you with the Vietnam War, if I got that correct, with wanting to have a better life for you and your siblings, and going over the new language thing was, you mentioned that one of the things you did was also only speak that certain language and carrying the dictionary around with you. Was that the only key special tip that you would give to someone for learning a new language as quickly as possible on the fly, such as if they're either immigrating towards another country, or maybe deciding they want to travel to somewhere, but don't know the local language, and there's that huge, not only a language barrier, but a different culture to learn. So for my example, I always wanted to travel to India, but I also know there's a lot of languages there, since they do have English due to British colonialization, but they also have in the northern region of Hindi. And I also know that and you think Hindi would be the official language of the country, but I know at the southern tip there's also Tamil, which they're very, very, very proud of and do not want to get rid of no matter what, because it's just part of their pride over there. So I'm just wondering, I'm just kind of wondering tips of quickly learning, especially since, with some of the things I do here, there is a Hispanic and I do interact with them, and some of them being immigrants that don't really speak very much English. So I'm kind of curious of, is it just keeping a dictionary around and constantly speaking the language to other thing, or what are other tips you could give? Because I know you teach English to those who want to be able to learn the language and being able to interact with other people.
Yes, you're right. So I have a very, very, very special course where I pack all my experiences and wisdom of over 38 years into a short 6 weeks of hourly fun course for entrepreneurs. So it's specifically catered for business owners or people with a driven mindset to succeed, for speakers, for coaches. And to answer your question, having the dictionary definitely help. Practicing definitely is the key, right? Any languages, if you don't speak it, you get rusty. So definitely practice. But the key to it all is not to rush. Same as any success journey in life, right? If you rush it, you don't get the foundation right. And what it meant is that particularly in speaking English, I'll just stay to that for now, and we'll address about different cultural, like you mentioned, to India. A lot of times I find that the amazing coaches, specifically, I'll use that as an example, because they have the great mindset, they're driven, they're doing the business, and they aspire to be a speaker as well. And I'm doing a little bit of that now to articulate that. They speak really fast. They speak so fast that I cannot understand what they say, right? And so the key to it all is slow down so that you can say the words clearly. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how fast you speak, but if people don't get your message, it still went nowhere. You still could not deliver your impacts and your influences because they can't hear what you say or they can't hear the message clearly. So the key to it all is to slow down and say the words clearly so that people can understand it. It doesn't matter if you speak with an American accent, Australian accent, English accent, or Indian accent, but the key to it is clear speech so that people can hear what you say to make the influence and the impact that you're wanting to make. So I hope that answers that question.
Yeah, definitely. And, I've tried taking Spanish like during high school and in college, but I think one of the biggest problems is just me not practicing enough, not taking the time to do it. But at the same time, I can't roll my tongue. So I know there's a difference between like 2 words, and that difference is rolling the tongue. So it's kind of difficult to do that.
And so can you imagine if you can't roll your tongue, but you're still rushing through the speech, then it makes it double difficult to understand, right?
Yeah,
and that's the flaw. That's the error that a lot of people make because they can't pronounce that word. So they might as well just rush through it so that people don't pick it up or something like that, or to make themselves feel better. But that's a double trip, that's a double trip over. If you can't say the word clearly already, and then you're rushing as well, and then it's like, I can't hear anything you say. And it's such a shame. So I have been on conferences and speaking events at a meta conference. I was the only author. I was the only one out of the IT geek world. Everybody there was IT experts because we're talking about metaverse. And that was like 2 years ago already. Time flies. I think 1.5 years at least. And there's professors, right? And then this IT expert from India. And he was like the spotlight of the show. The professor, we just wanted to show him off to us. But it was such a shame. The whole time I tried so hard to understand him, what he say, I could not understand anything. I just so wish that he could deliver his speech better. And so after that conference, I decided I've got to create this course to help the leaders. And that's how the course was born. And the business owners who've taken it, they loved it. For every single lesson, they loved it so much. Now, shall I answer your question about you going India with different language?
I have no idea when I'm actually going to be able to go to India since I'm still setting stuff up.
Let's catch up for that one. Let's catch up for that one. Let's move on as we have time constraints.
Yep. Well, if we end up going a little bit, that's okay too, because we need to make sure to get the info out. So, from the immigrant's perspective, what's the biggest lesson you could give us who are actually born here and may have not really experienced that kind of life of having to move to another country for whatever reason that maybe we tend to take for granted and not keep in mind? Since like here in the US, there is quite a bit of an issue with the immigration here, especially with illegal immigrants. And, sometimes there are people who are doing illegal immigration because they need to be able to earn the money to help their families back at home immediately. But at the same time, there's also criminal elements that are taking advantage of these people and really kind of giving them a bad reputation when it may not be warranted. So what's something like the biggest lesson that you can give us who are just born here and haven't faced these kind of issues? What's something we need to keep in mind for that?
So if I understand the question right, it is, what is the tips for them to do what? Can you rephrase the question for me? I understand the background now of all the immigrants and their situation, but what is the actual question?
What's the biggest lesson you could give us who are born here from an immigrant's perspective that we need to keep in mind? You know what I mean? Just like a different perspective of how our life goes since
I get what you mean. I get what you mean. I get what you mean. Yes. So basically, I'm in Australia. I'm in Sydney, Australia. I'm not in America. So I'm not going to be able to speak to the real situation because each country is slightly different.
Yeah.
But basically, what I understand is that you're trying to ask for some tips for people to move forward better, right? To have a better chance of succeeding in life. And going by my experience, when you come from an overseas, you have different identity. Now, your situation, the question that you asked is for the people who born there, right? And that is slightly different. Yeah. For the people who are born in the country but with an overseas background, there's a little bit of different mentality. Is that they either disown their heritage for some people, or some people want to embrace it. But there's this somehow a little bit of disconnect of different cultures. Yeah. So the main thing and what I did is that I hold on to what's good for my culture. And I talk about this in the book as well. But I also be so open to learn about the new culture. And then I was able to combine the best of both worlds. And that's what I teach in my book. In my book, I share the Eastern wisdom and the Western teaching of the elements that makes it good for me to move forward. Because the truth is, every culture, anything, right, has advantage and disadvantage. Every culture has got the good and the bad, right? And so basically, to be grateful for what we have, I take on all the great lessons from all the wisdom of the ancestor that taught, that I was able to learn, that was able to pass on to me. And I combined it with the new learnings that I have been able to gain in Australia. And so I combine it together and I make the best out of it. And so I guess the main thing is remember your cultures, remember your identity. The reason being is that if you disregard that, say, for example, I come to Australia and I experience many friends who have that trouble. I come to Australia and I try to ignore that I'm from an Asian background. It doesn't work. I can dye my hair blonde. I can wear lenses that makes my eyes blue. But deep inside, it still doesn't feel authentic, right? So that's why it's very important to acknowledge and remember your heritage and respect that all of those goodness that your heritage brings. And then, but for other people, some people who say, yeah, I'm Chinese, even though they live in Australia for 50 years, right? Now that doesn't work either, because the truth is you're no longer in China or Vietnam or Cambodia or wherever, or Spain, or Mexico. The truth is you're either in America or Australia. So then therefore you do need to embrace the current cultures and accept it. Accept the current culture, the practices, simply respect that, because you're living in the country, in your new home. If you were to call it home, you need to respect your home. Simple as that. So therefore, you need to be able to open to the new environment and embrace it and respect it. And this is not just about the country we live in. This carries over to the workplace, right? If you move to a new company, you've got to be sensible enough naturally, right? If you want to be welcome, if you want to be belonging, you have to respect your colleagues. You've got to learn a bit about your work culture, right? Every company has got their own work culture and differently, right? Now, even taking that outside of the organization context, even if we were to connect like this across the world, I need to understand what Christopher D. Carson is all about. Like I'm here on this podcast through the autistic's eyes, right? So we need to respect where we are and connect it to the people, the place that we are with. Otherwise, you just can't function. Otherwise, you just don't find the belonging and you don't gel and it just doesn't work. I hope that answers your question. Does that answer your question?
That just creates a disconnect, if you get what I'm saying, the importance of connections. And it goes beyond it's just learning to go past into deeper layers, I guess you could say, with how we're all connected, but we just have our own little contributions with our own cultures, you know what I mean?
Yeah, so to sum it up, the short answer is know yourself, know your own identity, and know your value, right? In that, because you value your own cultures, practices, your own heritage. And with that, be open, have a growth mindset, have an open mindset, be open and show respect to the new place, the new country, wherever you are, in order to combine the best of both worlds to make the best out of the environment for yourself.
Yeah, and I believe I'm guessing this contributed to how you were able to achieve all your dreams. So, is that what you consider a major factor towards being able to achieve such a feat when most people tend to fall down and not get up again? What are your thoughts on that?
Yes, absolutely. It's my openness to accept the new environment and my openness to be so willing to learn what I've got to learn. Because if I teleport you back in time, right? Imagine you're from America and suddenly you go to Mongolia, right? I know you said you went to Cambodia, but just remember when there is like a complete different cultural exchange where you never seen about that country before. So before I came, I did not know what a computer looked like, right? So I could easily curl up in a ball, stay at home, don't go out because I can't even speak like the language. I don't have friends. I can't go about. I could easily curl up in a ball and lock myself at home and say, no, I can't do anything. I refuse to do this. It's too hard for me. But what I did was that I was so eager to learn. Let me learn this, let me do this. Let me. So just giving myself the chance. And at the time I could not speak. So I use a lot of hand gestures, a lot of eye contact, to the extent that some people feel like, oh my, why are you staring at me? So I literally communicate with my eyes a lot back then because I was curious. and I couldn't understand what they say. So I was trying to draw the emotions. I was trying to draw the expressions from them and feel it with my heart, right? So I didn't communicate just verbally. I literally communicate with my heart and with my gesture. And I remember one time in the ESL class, English as a second language, in my first 6 months, I saw a mini statue of the skeleton, that model, the skeleton model on her desk. And I've never seen anything like that before in my life. I was fascinated. And so this is how naive I was, right? Imagine 14, I was 15, turning 15. I point to the skeleton model and I said, is it really? So I was trying to ask her, is it real? But I didn't know the word. And she just could not understand what I was trying to say. So that was just the funniest experience. It was like, I keep pointing at it. I keep saying the same word. I couldn't articulate it. And she was like trying to understand, what is this girl trying to say? So I would have to use a lot of body language, express it. I was tapping myself, I was trying to say, is it real? Obviously, it's not real because it was so tiny. But because I was so fascinated about it, I could not resist to ask the question, what is this thing, Because just remember, I came from very minimal resources place. I never seen anything like that before. Sorry, there is some background noise. I hope it doesn't interfere. I hope that's okay.
I can still hear you clearly. It's just
good.
kind of a little bit. Because this conversation reminds me of, I kind of did the opposite and basically just hid away, was very reclusive. So for me, it was a completely different experience going all the way to Cambodia and Thailand, where I find out that in order to enter Buddhist temples, you had to have your knees and shoulders covered up out of respect, as well as taking off your shoes before entering, which I almost did with this one temple in Chiang Mai, actually. And I realized the mistake, and I immediately put off my shoes and put them outside on the step, and someone was just local was just thanking me for doing that, because usually people who come in outside the country tend to not do that because they don't realize these different cultural differences, and just kept expecting everyone to act like them. So it's kind of learning how to adapt.
Yeah, so being able to adapt to your new environment is so crucial. Like I said, it's not just about visiting another country, but you're living there, right? So therefore you have to understand the culture. You have to be able to adapt it. And that's the same at new work. When you go to a new work, you have to understand the new work culture. You have to understand what people prefer or like. And then you have to be able to follow to fit in nicely.
Oh, you kind of went on mute.
Oh, sorry about that.
It happens sometimes with this technical stuff. But you did mention a while back that you did create a book on being able to create better connections. So what was the event that caused you to go towards becoming that, feeling that need to become an author, to write about this subject? And what do you consider being, and why do you consider this type of connection to be so important, especially after, say, recent events from 2020, where we were forcefully isolated because of the pandemic, and in some respects are still kind of affected by it because it kind of reverberated. Oh, you muted again. Muted again. There we
Sorry about that.
We're just playing a game here.
Yes. And I noticed the video delay a bit as well, but doesn't matter as long as everyone can hear me well. So with the book, there's a little background story to it, and I'll take you on a little journey for this story. So I wrote the book initially just for my children. My young children at the time was about 8 and 10, I think, back in 2016. So what happened was that I had very senior parents. At the time, my father was 92 years old. He was living by himself. He was doing amazing, still cook, clean, go out by himself. But unfortunately, he had a fall, like all elderly. Once they had a fall, they broke the hip bone. And from there, I had to spend a whole month of nursing him in the hospital and having to relocate him to the nursing home. And I had to drive an hour and a half to get to him. And so throughout that journey, because I have to come back to pick up my kids from school because they're still in elementary years. And so during that time, I so wished that my mother was here to nurse him, but she has passed away a long, long time ago. And so from that experience, I just realized that my kids never got to meet my mom. This incredible mother who lost her own mother at the age of 8, had 10 kids, and we all grew up to be amazing people, like heart center people. And I have been able to achieve all of my dreams from her guidance. So I just thought I need to write something down, our journey, our story, before I get too old and forget. And that was the inspiration. She was my inspiration to write a book, to bridge the generation gap, to connect them to her, with her, and of course about my father too. So that's how it all began. And then after I wrote the first chapter, amazing things happened. A coach in my cohort of coaches. At the time, I still wasn't very frequent on Facebook. I just belonged to a group just to be a coach because I want to stay in touch with my friends in America. But she died suddenly, no notice. Then the very next day, I saw a girl as I logged in my Yahoo email, this beautiful girl, like she was just staring at me. She's a brunette hair, beautiful tan skin, green eyes, like a model, but I don't know why. I don't know how it could happen that she took her own life due to cyberbullying. To this day, I still don't know how she could be cyberbullied when someone's so beautiful, right? And then the very next day, an 11-year-old boy was a friend of my Facebook friend's son, took his own life at the school in Australia. And I just could not stop crying. When I hear these news, I just could not stop crying. And so I just felt compelled that I need to share the book, that it has to be shared with other kids as well, not just my own kids. I feel so selfish if I know something and I don't share. That was the feeling I got at the time. And that was what made me feel compelled to share the book. And as soon as I decided to publish the book, which of course I revised and published it, but as soon as I decided to publish the book, the vision of having 3 Hearts connection hubs all around the world just came. I just had this image. I just imagined that if we have connection hubs all around the world, these 2 children might still be here. Their story might be different by now. And so with that, another compelling feeling to launch 3 Hearts. So 3 Hearts stands for love and connection for yourself, love and connection for each other, and love and connection for the universe. And just to clarify a little bit, we operate like a nonprofit. We're not exactly registered as a nonprofit because in Australia it's quite a complicated process. And instead of having to wait through all of that, I was just eager to serve and contribute to people. And so we have served so many, and we have contributed so much during the pandemic. Like you said, you're in the group and you've been a facilitator twice to our events for celebration. Yep. So 3 Hearts has been 3.5 years old, and we really have helped people stay connected right from the beginning through to the pandemic. I actually launched it in September 2019 in Sydney, and then launched it in Ohio in USA in January 2020. And in March, when COVID hit, we brought it on Zoom, and that's how we connected, and we launched through to Europe as well. So it's been really, really heartwarming. And so, yeah, that's the background to your story.
Yeah, so, like you mentioned, we have online connections such as 3 Hearts to Heal People, when at the same time, there's also been this is discussion, before the whole pandemic shutdown happened, where there was also a discussion how much of a need there needs to be of a physical connection, talking face to face and all that. And after being forced with only Zoom only, because that was the only way we could actually connect in the first place, because other than that, we were just stuck in our homes, not being able to talk. So is there a difference in quality, quote unquote, with connections of online and offline connections from your experience?
Absolutely. I don't think anything can take away the in-person connection in terms of replacing it. However, as we know, there are always advantages and disadvantages in life, right?
Yeah.
The advantage of Zoom is that like I can connect with you across the world without Zoom or any of these teleconference, whether it's Google Hangout, whether it's StreamYard like right now. Without these modalities, this technology, we would not have been able to connect, right? But to answer your question, definitely the in-person connection definitely overrides only if it's quality connection though, right? Just because we're meeting in person doesn't mean it's always quality connection though, right? Whereas the opposite is also true. Just because we are connecting over a technology modality doesn't mean it's any less. So I think like anything in life, it's not just the surface that we judge or critique, but it's also the deeper level of the real thing that we're talking about, which is always quality. So with my work, with everything I do, it's never the quantity, but the quality. So if you meet with someone in person, and if you both are, on the same page, on the same vibe, of course, it's beautiful. It's more beautiful than on Zoom or any modality. But if you both don't gel, it doesn't really matter, right? Whether it's in person or not, right? So so I hope that answers that question.
Yeah, definitely. Because there was always, I remember talks here in the US about how people were also connected, but at the same time, we were spending more time just paying attention to a phone screen rather than the people around us, like say at a cafe where we could have that connection, but we don't because we're so busy with staring at a phone screen all the time. But then I also remember those meme pics, those funny pics on the internet where they said, hey, we kind of did this before phones. It's called always looking at the newspaper while at the subway and not paying attention to each other. So I guess it was just it's like same thing but a different wrapping, so to speak,
That's
of the same
right.
issue.
That's right. So it's more about our intention, right? Like you said, you pointed out so beautifully. Before the phone, there was the newspaper, there was the magazine, right? Or whatever else it was, or reading the book. Even reading a book is beautiful, but it's still, right? You're still on your own. So, and the thing about on the phone is that it's about your intention. If you're on the phone and texting to your mother, when you can't speak because you're in different time zone, or whether you're at work, you just had a few minutes and you're texting your mother or your spouse or your children, that is beautiful. There's nothing wrong with that, being on the phone. And I think, so it's really about the intention of what we do and the quality of what we do, rather than picking on just about what it is, right? So, if you, let's say, for example, if I have to be somewhere and not sitting in my office to be on this call with you, right? Or maybe in a different mode that we look like we're just texting, but it could be the most important text ever, right? And I've done that before. Someone overseas in another country, a different time zone, they in a crisis, right? I'll give you an example. Someone was in San Francisco, right? Celebrating life, right? But unfortunately, something happened, right? And they were in a bit of a tangle in terms of their spiritual journey, which often happens when you go through a spiritual discovery. And I was sitting here texting away, trying to, comfort and so-called rescue him. So really, if we just look on the surface and want to be judgmental, you can judge about anything and everything. Many people like to talk and like to judge and like to point out the negative of things. Whereas for me, I like to highlight the positive of things, because it's good to be aware of what's not working so that we can improve. But to just sit there and point out all the flaws and everything that's not working, I don't think it adds value. And so, go back to that. Sorry, my long-winded way of answering that question is about intention.
Yeah, it's fine. I'm fascinated.
Intention and quality. Intention and quality of what we do is what's most important.
Yeah, especially these days where part of that issue of always being online is social media and how it always seems to be shortening our attention span, which I heard right now the attention span has gone down from a minute to just 15 seconds of getting that attention, on top of the, the focus of some of these influences that take photos of themselves by a very fancy luxury car or an airplane that they don't actually own, they just rent. And it gives us this feeling that we're missing something, and feeling like we should be there and we're not there, and causing that odd definition of happiness when it's really materialistic. So how does one define what we can consider our own happiness from your experience with Three Hearts and everything else? And how would you find your definition of happiness? Is it something that's universal that you think can be really adapted to despite any of the differences in cultures? Is it very individualized, or is it a little bit of a combination of both that we need to figure out?
Yes, that's just beautiful question. Thank you for asking that. It is a bit of both. The unifying virtue is that I share in the book that there's two layers to happiness. There's the external layers, like what you just mentioned, the fancy cars, the big house. We all aspire to that. Why? Because it makes our life a bit more comfortable, right? Instead of cramping a little more space, you have a bit more space to do work or whatsoever, right?
And also, the whole keeping up with the Joneses thing here in America, with looking like you're successful, and while at the same time people are finding that it doesn't really fulfill them as much as they originally thought they would once they get it. Because once they get it, it's like, well, now what? You know what I mean?
Exactly. So that's why then there's the internal layers. You can't just focus on the external layers only, right? The external layer, if you don't mention about compared to the Joneses and whatsoever, if you just truthfully aspire to do better, that is what we all human want to do, right? We want to expand, we want to learn, we want to grow. Grow is part of happiness, but that alone is not enough. So that's why I share, there's also the internal layers of happiness, and that's all about within yourself. And that's when it relates back to personal level, right? You have to understand your value. You need to know what is it that makes you happy, right? So what makes you happy might not be what makes me happy. Now, say, for example, I could just go out on a walk and I will see this beautiful flower, and that's enough for me to like smile the biggest smile. And yet some people don't understand that. Like, what's the big deal about that, right? So that's where it comes to the personal level. And when it comes to a personal level, that's when you need to do a bit of self-discovery. That's when you need to understand about your identity, understand about your value, understand about what makes you happy and why is that thing makes you happy. And then you have to evaluate, like you said, some people might have made fortunes, and I have met these people. I have met some millionaire who say, Linda, you can only go on so many trips and drink so many spirits. And then what? They even get tired of that, right? And then what? So therefore, you need to have the internal layers of meaning of what is it that makes you happy. For some people, it could be that, I just make time to go and volunteer to help people who are less fortunate. That makes them feel more fulfilling, because it's meaning that they're giving back, because now they already have the wealth that they want to create it. But for some other people who might not have the wealth, who might not have the materialistics, but it doesn't matter to them, because what matters to them is that I'm able to either spend time at home with my senior parents or my grandparents, or what matters to them that I just want to do drawing all day long. I don't care about what people do. I don't care about the big fancy cars, because I don't aspire to that. All I want to do is just draw all day long, because that's what makes me happy. So that's when it goes back to your personal level. But on the universal level, I have spoken to so many people, and it's proven that it's so true. The external layers of success only does not bring you true fulfillment and true happiness. And when you only work on the internal, but you refuse to grow on the external factors, you're also lacking something. So therefore, when we have both layers, the external and the internal, or the internal first will be better. if you discover all your internal, your ID, your external success will be faster. And when we combine that together, that's beautiful. That's when we can move on and say, I'm happy, I know who I am, I know my value, I'm achieving, and then you can continue steadily. Whereas when your internal is not fulfilled, I'll give you one quick example. I wasn't going to share this, but this just come to mind. I'm just going to go with the flow, being in the present moment.
Go with the flow.
Go with the flow. Go with the flow. The universe guides us. So on Sunday, very sadly, we have a big, big sad news in Australia. At 2 a.m., our most beloved jock, the Master Chef, on the Master Chef TV show, had passed away suddenly. Now, we still don't know the cause of death. But the story about him is that he's a Scottish. His mother is from Scotland. His father is from Italy, and he came to Australia. Since the age of 12, he already loved cooking. And because of that, very quickly, by the time he's 15, 17, 19, he's already with big chefs. He's built an incredible life story, incredible journey, and continuously be so successful. But the sad thing that I read was that despite the success that he kept accumulating, all his accolades, he still battles with the anxiety about self-worth. And so that's why I just said that it's better to work on the internal layers first. When you have the internal layers work out, that's your foundation. Just like anything in life, right? When you build a house, when you do anything, the foundation is so important. Once you have your foundation built, right, the layers that you build up, it's just a lot more steady. And so I just thought I share that. And so, I
appreciate that.
Just know your value, know who you are, know your identity, and stay grounded. And that's how you can build your happiness in a lot more solid way. Because we will always get challenges every day. It doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter if you're the king, the queen, the prince, the president. In fact, the higher status you are, the more challenges you get, and the quicker and the deeper it hits you, right? So therefore, it is so crucial to keep coming back to who you are. Each step of the way as you climb the ladder of success, come back to who you are. What's my value? What am I doing? So I often share these 3 questions that guide you for life. And I believe it will guide anybody, even the king, the queen. Yeah. Would you like me to share that?
Yeah, I was just wondering if, this connection is also the major reason why people have gone to depression and anxiety in the first place, because they didn't bother to check on who they are, and instead are too focused on getting that approval of everyone else around them instead of really centering themselves. And just, for people who don't gel with you, it's okay for them to just go out in their own separate ways instead of feeling like we need to restrict ourselves into a box no matter what. And does that relate to the 3 questions that you asked for people wanting to get out of that depression situation?
Sorry, it kind of broke out 1 second. What was the last bit? The question? Okay. Does it what?
I was thinking the 3 questions you're about to ask. You said you asked everyone. Would that also help with contributing to being able to center themselves so that they can get out of that depression and anxiety that's become much of an issue?
Yeah. So I guess it all goes back to stay connected with yourself. And that is knowing who you are, your identity, right? If you know who you are and then you know your value, then you will know that the people that you're associated with, whether you can contribute to each other's life or not, right? And if they no longer resonate, it's sometimes we try as hard as we can to stay as friends for as long as we can. But if you no longer serve each other, maybe it's time for each other to move on, not just yourself, but the other person too, to move on and discover their own circle of life and their own circle of friends. And that's why I was going to share these 3 questions earlier, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure.
So the 3 question is, the number 1 is ask yourself, what am I doing? Always. that immediately brings you back to the present moment. What am I doing? The second one is that why am I doing it? So what am I doing? I'm associating with this friend. Why? How do I contribute to their relationship, to their value, to develop this friendship, and vice versa, or at work or anything? And then the third one is, how can I do it better? How can I do it better, whether it's in friendship, whether it's work, whether it's your project, whether it's your business, whether it's running the country, right? So these three questions is most fundamental that can guide you for life to stay on track and to achieve what you want to achieve.
Nice. Could you read? Let's see. Don't mind me. I'm just still kind of tired. You know what I mean?
That's okay. That's all right. Take your time.
Yeah, especially since right here in the Western United States, it's like nature decided, okay, we're going to cancel spring. We're just going to go straight from winter to summer. So it's kind of a bit of an adjustment here.
That's okay. Take your time.
Okay. So, as you know, I'm part of that neurodivergent group of people. I'm on the autistic spectrum, and we deal with depression and anxiety like no other. I guess you could say that's my opinion, but it's just that struggle to really make that connection in the first place, because we feel like we almost like an alien on this planet, where we have such a difficulty being able to connect to others because we experience everything so different, which in my case, people say normal, and I'm like, well, what exactly does that mean? I'd never experienced this normal that seemed that the definition for it is always changing. So for those who are neurodivergent that are going through that anxiety and depression and really do have that struggle with gaining that connection in the first place because of that clash of not being able to understand social norms, no matter how hard they try, and it feels like very hopeless, that causes them to slip in that depression and feeling suicidal in the first place. What would be your biggest advice for those people who are going through such struggles with connections and feeling that disconnection, feeling that they struggle to even find that in the first place?
Yeah, that's such an important question. Thank you for asking. But before I answer it, I just want to make a disclaimer that I'm not a clinical psychologist as such. So anybody who listens to the advice, please take it with caution that I'm not a clinical psychologist. This is a general sharing my life experiences. And to answer your question, I would think the one thing that we could do, and not just whether you're autistic or anything, the one thing that all of us humanly could do at any of those times is to give ourselves a hug. Seriously, give ourselves a hug. Because at those points in time, at times you feel so lonely. And even though I'm not autistic or whatsoever, I feel you. I do feel it. And in fact, that was one of my flaws. Sorry, I'm getting emotional. That was one of my flaws growing up. Growing up, I was often told, you're too sensitive. You're just too sensitive. And it was exactly like this. If I see someone in a wheelchair, I would be in tears already. So if I see someone struggling or getting up the steps, I so want to run over and help them carry their bags. And I share a bit about it in the book. So I have this extra surplus of emotions that I feel other people's pain before they feel it, so-called, in a way. Because when they're dealing with it themselves, they're strong, they're tough, so they put their pain or emotions aside. And because of that, I actually feel it extra for them. So that was interesting. And because of that, that's why I have this compassion to feel compelled to share my book when I hear of the suicidal cases of the 2 children. And because of that, that's why I started 3 Hearts. So to answer the question, the number one thing is always give yourself a hug. Seriously, give yourself a hug, because no one understands what we feel at that moment in time. And by sharing that, I hope that anybody who's listening, if you're autistic, if you Asperger's, whatever it is, or ADHD, just know that you're not alone. You're not alone. And it's not just people who would label that feel the aloneness at times in our life. I felt it too. I felt it too many a times, right? Even though I'm very open and cheerful and connecting kind of person, the truth is, as a human being, we experience a whole lot of emotions throughout the day, throughout the month, throughout the week, even sometimes within the hour, within the moment. It's just exactly like now, you know, I could be very cheerful when I talk about certain experience because my memory go back there. And now with this experience, again, my memory go back there. I experience a different emotions. So the first thing is give ourselves a hug, acknowledging the feeling, the moment. But, and here's the crucial part, but don't dwell on that emotion and keep going downward. Instead, flip the switch and go forward instead. So I have these 3-step strategies that helps with catching our thoughts in those moments of experiencing some kind of so-called negative thoughts. And I'll share that with you. So if you like to do it with me, it anchors the memory so that you can do it every time it happens. Let's say, for example, I have a thought that come in that is not very helpful, such as give me one negative thought that leads you to feel like, so, you know, going down the negative thinking.
The feeling of being worthless.
So worthless. So okay, I feel so worthless. So what you do is you catch it, catch that thought. Okay, catch it. The reason why we want to catch that thought is the awareness. I'm aware I'm thinking this thought. Then the next thing is we park it. So you can open your eye, Christopher, and you do park it, right? The reason why we park it is because I want you to imagine like you're driving a car to the super centers, yeah, to the malls, right? You park your car. Once you park your car, you know where it is. You can go back to it, right? Without thought, it's the same. When I say that, oh, stop thinking negative thoughts, you can't because you're attached to that emotions at that point in time. That's why we just park it. So I catch a thought. Okay, I'm going to park you. You park that thought. That's how you can detach from that thought. That is a break of the pattern. So you park it and then you're going to flip it. So you flip your palm. Yeah, you flip it by turning the negative thought into a positive thought, by challenging yourself. Okay, really, am I that worthless? You know, I've done all of this in my life. I've get to where I am now. I can't be that worthless. I got to worth something, right? I'm pretty cool to get to where I am now. So that's how you flip your dialogue. You flip that negative pattern to a positive one. So we're going to do that again. Okay, we're going to catch and park, and then we flip. Yes. So that's what we do. Okay, so anytime you have a negative thought, you're just going to catch it, park it, and flip it. Okay. So it's very simple, but it's very effective because it has all the theories behind it, right? By catching it, you're being aware. You're being aware of the thought, right? And being aware is powerful. Awareness is when transformations happen. And by parking it, first of all, you detach the emotions. Like I said, if I tell you to just don't think about it, you can't, because as human beings, we attach to our emotions. And by parking it, you interrupt that pattern of thought. That's powerful. By interrupting it, then you can flip it. Because if you don't interrupt that, the chain of spiral will happen. And instead of spiraling downwards, we want it to spiral upwards. That's why we flip the switch. Does that help?
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of how I also thought about it because my experience with it is just almost kind of equivalent of that word worthless, like almost like a branch debris that's going down the river. It just goes by, and you could either choose to attach yourself to that word and its meaning worthless by basically almost instantly grabbing it unconsciously just from thinking about or even trying to force get rid of it, or you could just become the observer of the thought instead of immediately attaching yourself. So when you're going pocket, you're basically saying that okay, I'm trying to get the words to form. What is wrong? Yeah,
that's okay.
But it's basically you acknowledge it, but you don't let it define you by attachment.
Right. That's right. That's beautifully put, Christopher. Thank you for putting it that way. That's beautiful. Yeah, yeah. So I hope that simple strategies and the 3 questions helps everyone who's listening. Yes.
Yeah, especially, and we're at the top of the hour already.
Time goes. We can always come back and have more conversations if you still have more questions. That's okay.
Yeah, sure. And in case anyone does have questions for you that I want to be able to reach to you offline, how can they do that? And maybe just learn more about you and 3 Hearts and what you're doing.
Sure. You can email me at Linda, LINDA, at Linda Duong, my surname as on the screen, DUONG.com.au, because I'm in Australia. So Linda at lindaduong.com.au. And you can join our 3 Hearts Facebook group. It's 3 Hearts Connections Global. Yeah, and that's the page. Thank you for showing that link, Christopher. That's the link that tells you a bit of background about 3 Hearts. So please do visit the page, and you'll see some of the videos and some beautiful stories shared there.
Yeah, and for those listening on to the audio version with the podcast, it's Linda, DUONG.com.au / the number 3 Hearts to be able to reach that. And I believe you also have a YouTube channel. Is that correct?
Yes. So the YouTube channel is Linda Duong Author, just to make it easy. Same as Facebook page is Linda Duong Author.
Okay. So thank you again so much for joining me. I definitely hope this has been helping a lot of people. And as well, if you decide that you want to learn more about me and what I do as well, there's Facebook, Instagram, Twitter with CD Casting Creates, and also to be able to watch previous episodes of Thru Autistic Eyes. So there's the Facebook page and as well as a Patreon if you would like to be able to support the podcast, so that it could keep continuing, so that we can continue to have guests like Linda Duong come on and be able to help everyone, and as well as be able to create that understanding to get rid of that artificial barrier that we believe is there between the neurotypical world and the neurodiverse world. Be able to see that it's not 2 different worlds, it's just the same world, it's just different perspectives. Just as there's a different perspective of what we define as happiness that we've discussed here. So it's at Thru Autistic Eyes Official. So thank you so much, very much. I'm looking forward to the next 3 Hearts meeting for next time. And this is Christopher D. Casson, and we are signing off. So next week, I'm taking a break so that I could get the podcast versions up, but look forward to the week afterwards. So thank you guys so much for joining, either live or on the replay, and catch you later.
Thank you, Christopher. Thank you for having me.
Mm-hmm.